All right, it's time to talk Atlanta Falcons football. And unfortunately, Kevin was hoping we would avoid this conversation for another week or two when the season began. But it's just the way that it is with Kevin's Falcons and my Jets, that this is the time of year that we have to talk about our teams when we take a look at the offseason just a little bit earlier than the teams that have success during the football season. So it's about winning the offseason once again. And this is going to be a big offseason for the Atlanta Falcons, something that Kevin has teased several times on this channel, on this program before. And Kevin, we're pretty much here. We're almost there. The big offseason for the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah. Well, it's, we were all hoping that this would be a stepping stone year. Obviously, a year where the team was continuing their plan of the slow rebuild, which I still believe was the right decision. I think they were doing things the right way, but they made one critical error, which was ignoring the quarterback position. And, I think there was certainly some hope surrounding Desmond Ridder at the beginning of the year that if he could just put it together, be average, below average quarterback with the pieces they had around him and, the run game and all that it would be fine. And that, the team could win this division because it's the worst division in football. They were playing the easiest schedule. And as we saw, Desmond Ridder was not below average. He was worse in the NFL. And the run game fell off a cliff, and Arthur Smith's scheme was basically exposed as not being able to adapt or change in any significant way year to year. And that led to the run game basically being snuffed out by pretty much everyone, despite adding an elite player in Bijan Robinson to the already elite pairing of Patterson and Algier that was there last year. And things just fell off a cliff from there. All that despite the defense coming together in miraculous fashion and finishing as a borderline top 10 defense. They still couldn't win this division because of how bad the offense was. And as you know, that leads to firings, and that is exactly what happened with Arthur Smith getting fired.
Yeah, and the whole quarterback thing. And look, timing is everything when you draft, and that's why I think sometimes some general managers get the short end of the stick when they're blamed for picking quarterbacks and they don't work out. And I bring it up, like, for instance, let's say that this offseason was last offseason and the Falcons were going to use a second round pick to draft a quarterback, and they were going to give that kid a chance to succeed or not, and just to see what would happen. A third round quarterback, like Ridder. There are going to be so many really good quarterbacks that might be coming out this year that a second or a third rounder could end up being guys like, I don't know. I mean, I know people I think there's a lot of people out there that I think are getting a little bit carried away with where they're putting some of these quarterbacks. Like, everybody's a top 10 quarterback. Well, it doesn't work out that way. But there are going to be some really good Bo Nix could end up being a second or a third round quarterback. So that kind of guy could have been the Falcons quarterback, which you would have been a much better position to see, oh, maybe this guy works out. So that's just the name of the game. So I guess I gotta ask you, first of all, we know the head coach is out, obviously, but what about Terry Fontenot? What's the deal there? And is he going to be the guy that is going to be allowed to help hire the next head coach?
Well, that is one of the more frustrating things with this current setup, which is that we don't really know what Fontenot's role is, because we assumed, of course, that Fontenot would be heavily involved in the coaching search, or at least be a key figure. But the ownership of the team held a very awkward press conference after firing Arthur Smith, where Terry Fontenot was not in the room. And they got a lot of pointed questions about why Terry Fontenot was not in the room. And they didn't really have any good answers, saying things like, oh, well, he's busy doing other things or something like that. Very questionable. But basically, it sounds like Arthur Blank and team CEO Rich McKay are going to be leading the coaching search with input, quote unquote, from Terry Fontenot, which is, of course, a terrible thing to do, to hamstring your GM like that twice, because, at this stage, it's kind of questionable why you would have a GM if you don't trust him enough to be heavily involved in your coaching search. They obviously hired Arthur Smith before Fontenot last time, and we saw how that worked out. So now it's led to a whole mess where fans are questioning, like, why is the owner and the team CEO, who himself is a quote unquote disgraced GM who was, promoted after failing as a general manager to more of the business side. Why are those two making the decisions at coach and not the general manager? And, they've tried to downplay it as like, this is how they've always done it. The GM's going to have input, all this stuff. But I mean, it's very questionable. I mean, to me, Fontenot is the one piece that you definitely wanted to keep. And again, it's like, how much power does Fontenot really have? Was it his decision to pass on quarterback back in 2021 when they had the opportunity to draft Fields? Was it his decision to pass on quarterback the last 2 years? How much did Arthur Smith have the majority of the power? Or, what's going on there? There's a lot of unanswered questions, and it's a very awkward situation. But I do think Fontenot should stick around. But, the team's infatuation, it seems, with Bill Belichick is also leading to questions about, well, if Bill Belichick comes here, what's the point of Terry Fontenot? Because Bill Belichick's going to take full control of everything. So, that's the nightmare scenario right now, is they're just going to clear the decks for Bill Belichick, who's going to come here, have a couple losing seasons, and then retire, and clear the entire team of everything, because Bill Belichick only works with Belichick guys, only works with Belichick players. So he's going to clear the roster of anyone who doesn't subscribe to the Belichick way, bring in his guys for a 3 years max run at this stage.
Yep.
Where, I mean, that's the disaster scenario that we're looking at. And, if you believe Twitter rumors, Arthur Blank was whining and dining Belichick today on his yacht. So, we'll see what happens there. But we're hoping the Cowboys can come in, swoop in, and save the Falcons from themselves.
Yeah, because it's one of those things where, again, some of these owners, they understand that even though they've got all the money in the world, they can't just throw all the money in the world at these coaches, because they're going to get in trouble with their own brethren. They're going to be like, why are you giving this guy so-and-so? We can't afford this guy. It's not fair. Come on, you can't do that. But you would think that Blank and Jones would be like, hey, man, I'd love to give this guy $50 million to come here. I mean, I don't care. I mean, this is the type of guy that's going to lead my team and help to, get me where I need to go, whether it's a Harbaugh or a Belichick. Then, to tell you the truth, I'm sure they're probably worth it. But that's an interesting dilemma, like you said, because I got to tell you right now, as much as I admire Belichick, and everybody does, I'm sorry, but his draft track record sucks. And I am not allowing him to come in here if he wants full control of the draft. I mean, I'm just not going to do it. As much as I love him, I'm not going to do it, because your draft has not done anything, especially on offense, that is going to lead me to believe that you're going to be able to fix things unless you have a quality general manager and pro personnel guy handling that part of the business.
Yeah, and that's the big question is, is he able to do that? And is he willing to give up control? And if he was willing to give up control, would you believe him? And how long would that last? Right. Because as soon as anything goes wrong, he's going to see. And he has good reason to. He's arguably one of the top 3 most successful coaches of all time. He's won 6 Super Bowls. He believes in his system, and his system has worked for him. So I don't know why he would want to change.
Yeah, he won't.
He won't. No. Exactly. So, and I don't blame him. I mean, there's no good reason to. But Bill Belichick is a great coach. Tremendous defensive mind. We all know that. The one thing he hasn't been able to do is find a quarterback outside of Tom Brady. And that's why he needs to go somewhere where that's already set. The Chargers would make a lot of sense. The Cowboys would make a lot of sense. The Falcons would not make any sense at all. And I think Blank thinks he's making a big splash that'll get butts in the seats, but what he doesn't seem to understand is that Falcons fans don't like Bill Belichick. I can't imagine why they don't. I can't fathom that. But they also, Falcons fans also know that he's a rental for a couple of years. He's going to come in here. He's going to break he's going to break his tie for the most wins or second most wins. And he's going to retire. And we're going to be back in this situation in 3 years max. So I don't really understand it. I don't think this team is close enough where you can go for that type of approach. And they're not in a situation where they have everything set up for him to come in and just run the defense. They would need to get the quarterback still. They would need to get the offense fixed. To me, Bill Belichick makes no sense. But Arthur Blank is going hard after Bill Belichick. He seems infatuated with him. And I just hope he'll listen to Fontenot and the rest of the staff that are probably telling him, no, don't do this. But Blank is going to do what he wants to do. And the only reason the Falcons don't have Deshaun Watson right now is because the Browns made an even worse decision. So
Yeah, that's the old saying. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones you don't make or can't make
Yep.
in that respect. Okay, so let's start with draft capital. Again, where are they picking right now?
Eighth
Eighth.
overall.
Okay.
Again, for the third straight year. It's an NFL record.
Wow. Okay. Eighth. Talk about the rest of their draft capital right now. How's it looking?
It's good. Depending on if the Jaguars sign Calvin Ridley to an extension or not, that will determine whether they get a third round pick or a second round pick. They've already gotten the third based on Calvin Ridley's play time and certain things like that. If they sign him to an extension, it becomes a second. So right now they have their first, they have their second, they have 2/3. That second third could become a second. We'll see. They also have a fourth, a fifth, and a sixth. So they have pretty much full draft capital with an extra day 2 pick in there. And then, they have plenty of cap space. They've got, I think, 40 million right now, and they could easily clear another 15, 20, depending on what they want to do with certain other players.
And who would that be? Who are some potential cuts? Cap casualties.
Guys, yeah, I mean, the obvious ones would be like Taylor Heineke, who was just abysmal when he came in. Arthur Smith's decision to go back to Taylor Heineke after benching Ritter a second time is probably part of the reason he got fired, because not only did it not work, it was worse than Ritter. So, and they spent a lot of money on him. So in 2024, Taylor Heineke's cap hit is $9 million, and they can save $7 million by cutting him. So that's going to happen. A lot depends on what the new coach wants to do and what the new coach's plan is. But they could save 6.5 by cutting Jonnu Smith as well. Doesn't seem likely, but they could save, 2.5 by cutting Caden Ellis. That doesn't seem to be something they're going to do. He was a good starting linebacker for him.
Okay. Those are the two big names, though, Heineke and Jonnu Smith?
Yeah, those are the big money guys, and those two together would save, $13.5 million or whatever. They also have like Lorenzo Carter. They could save him close to $4 million. He was a solid rotational guy, but you could potentially want the savings depending on if you're going after a big name free agent. And then Mike Hughes is the other guy. He would save them over $3 million, and I think he was middling at best. So that's 20 million or so in savings right there they could make, and they already have, I think, at this point. I think if you look at like total cap space, it's sort of like close to, I think right now they have like 58 players under contract for next year already. So they're well over the top 51 rule, and they have, more than 20 million. I think effectively it's more like 30 million, but we'll have to see how it shakes out. So I think total they could get up to about 40 million in cap space without too much trouble.
Yeah, I'm just throwing on the over the cap numbers here, or actually the players that are also considered free agents, starting with the highest paid free agent, Calais Campbell. So you also have on defense, you got Okudah, Dupree, and I'm not sure I see any other big names on defense. Am I missing any other big names on defense? No, right?
Yeah, I mean they've got, in terms of big time players or cap casualties, or
just free agents generally. UFAs.
Oh yeah, free agents. Sorry, I missed that first part of that sentence. Yeah, I mean Calais Campbell's the big one. He was awesome at age 38. I mean, so I think if the big question is like, do they bring in someone like Bobby Slowick, who was my personal choice at head coach, or like a Ben Johnson, I would love, or a Raheem Morris, which seems to be one of their top candidates. Him coming back to Atlanta, I think those guys would all probably leave the Falcons defensive staff intact. And that would be really smart, I think, because again, it was a top 10 defense with, still lacking quite a bit of talent, especially in the pass rush. They just kind of cobbled it together and made it work. And obviously, Jesse Bates was a massive addition, arguably the best safety in football. But Calais Campbell, I think if they are able to retain that defensive staff, he'll be back. Okay. And I would love to have him back. But not Bud Dupree, $7 million, pretty middling. Right? Yeah, he was $7 million, but I mean, I would do it. I mean, he was worth it, which is crazy for a guy of that age. But
good for him.
So I mean, I think he had 2 sacks in the last game of the season. I mean, he really came on strong. Obviously, still elite run defender. So I have no question that if he wants to play, and he's just such a presence too. His leadership.
Yep.
You got to. It's a kind of a young team, honestly. So getting those types of guys in there, I think, is important. Yeah, Bud Dupree, I could take or leave. He was fine,
Okay.
but not really a plus. So I don't know if I'd pay $3 million again for him. Guys like Kentavious Street, does he come back? That would be interesting. Again, this is more like depth type guys.
Those
so
are
the big,
sure.
the big guys like Calais Campbell, Patterson.
How about
you have to
Okudah?
think with Okudah's a question mark. He got benched for Clark Phillips at the end of the year, so I think if he's willing to come back for cheap, then absolutely. If he wants significant money, I don't think he'll be back. So that's kind of up to him. But they like Clark Phillips, who, he had up and downs, obviously, but as a rookie, I think you're pretty happy with that. So, and they're already going to have to pay Terrell, so I don't think they want to give big money to two corners at this stage.
True.
So
that's true.
What about? But offense? There's not a ton on offense. I mean, it's Cordell Patterson, but with Smith gone, how much do they value that third running back?
No,
do they value
it
$5 million? Probably not. He'll be 34. If he's willing to come back for cheap, I'd have no problem with it whatsoever. Exactly. But you have to think with Avery Williams coming back from his injury, he's going to be the returner. They really missed his return ability. It's pretty crazy how bad the punt return game was without Avery Williams. But otherwise, there's just not much out there. I mean, Kadero Hodge, good special teamer, solid depth receiver. Yeah. Matt Hennessy maybe as like their primary interior depth guy, but he missed the whole season with injury. So, probably going to be cheap. Yeah. I would bring him back without question. And then Storm Norton filled in for them for several games. For Caleb McGarry, there wasn't a drop-off there. So I would definitely bring back Storm Norton as your swing tackle and just have that pretty much set. That would be nice to have that security.
Bottom line, though, is looking at this looking at these UFAs, I mean, besides giving Campbell a nice one-year deal, none of these guys are going to be given, even if they come back, they're not going to be given more than $3 million a year, you would think. They're not worth it. So I'm sure they're not going to get it. So that's good. That means there's a lot of money out there to bring in new free agents and to shape the team, which is why this is also a very good landing spot for a head coach. Now, of course, anybody's going to say, well, you got Herbert already there with the Chargers. Okay, fine, got it. But this is a really good position as well. You've got the 8th pick, like you said. You have 4 really good slots as far as the draft. And having a top 10 in this year's draft with all the quarterbacks that are coming out says that you are going to land a good quarterback. And it's up to the head coach and the GM and the scouts to find the right guy. You're going to get one. It's just, do you get one at 8? Do you want to move up and make sure you get somebody that you really like in the top 3? But either way, you're going to get the quarterback, which is why you can say, yeah, we've got already Herbert. We know what he's like, and that's great. But it's also sometimes nice to know that you're coming in there and you can choose your own quarterback and the guy that you think fits your offense. And you get a jump start on the fact that, yeah, well, Herbert's making God knows how much. We're going to bring in a rookie, and we're not going to have to worry too much about, salary deals with giving away, $50 to $100 million on a guy at that premium position for at least a few years.
Yeah. No, and I think that is the biggest decision of the offseason other than coach, right? And the coach they pick is going to make a big difference in that as well, because if they do end up with Belichick, please no, but if they do, they're probably going to go for a veteran, right? They're probably going to see if Russell Wilson is available for a relatively, reasonable deal, which he probably will be. I don't think people are saying he's going to be vet minimum. Come on, he's not nowhere near that bad. He's probably going to get 10 million or so. Yeah. But, I think a Justin Fields trade would make so much sense for this team. He really fits their personnel well. So I think really it's depends on the coach first of all, but I see sort of 3 things. So for the first thing that matters, and this matters for any team that's trying to get a quarterback in the draft, is what do the Bears do, right? Do the Bears want Justin Fields, or do they want to take a quarterback at 1? Yep. I think most people think they're going to take a quarterback at 1. So that means there's no opportunity to trade up to number 1. And that does mean that Justin Fields is available. So in that case, one option would be a veteran route, preferably Justin Fields. The second option would be to trade up. And if the Bears aren't going to play ball at 1, it's really hard to get one of the top 3 quarterbacks because the Bears are going to take one, the Commanders are going to take one, and the Patriots are probably going to take one. So that's your top 3 quarterbacks off the board. Are you really trading up for the 4th best quarterback? Probably not, right? You're probably just going to see how it works, how it shakes out. And it really sets up a difficult situation for everyone who needs a quarterback in the draft outside the top 3 picks. But we know this is how it goes. The quarterbacks are going to go quick. So you can trade. Maybe the Patriots decide to take Marvin Harrison at 3 and go a veteran route themselves. Who knows what happens with Kirk Cousins and some of these other guys. So Russell Wilson maybe goes there. You never know. So if you can get the Cardinals, get to pick the 4th pick with a quarterback on the board, you could probably work out a deal with the Cardinals. There'll be a lot of people trying to do it, but that could be your way to get up for like a Jaden Daniels. So that would be the second option. The third option would be to stay at 8 and go for like a Michael Penix or a Bo Nix. I'm probably partial to Penix in that situation, but again, that's a little bit of a reach probably. But you got to reach on quarterback. That's just how it is. There's no other option. So if Penix's medicals check out, I think he makes a ton of sense there. He's obviously an advanced passer. He's got enough mobility to be dangerous. You're obviously not going to run him a lot given his injury history, but he's a good quarterback. Bo Nix is more the dual threat guy, so he could be an option too. And again, that probably depends on what the coach wants, but that's your 3 choices. You don't really have any other good options. So to me, I think it's, Justin Fields trading up to 4 if you get lucky there, or sitting at 8 and seeing who's available. But it's dicey no matter what. But I think my personal choice is probably Justin Fields, just because I think what you're getting there. You have a couple years to decide if he's worth an extension or not. With the 5th year option, and then you could tag him if you need to. And you don't have to sit there and risk the 8th overall pick, not getting a guy you want and having to reach on somebody, and you don't have to give up the capital it's going to take to get up to number 4 for what's likely to be the 3rd best quarterback at this stage. So that's kind of the situation they're in. It's dicey, it's exciting, and we're probably not going to really know what the complexity is going to be until we see what happens with the Bears this offseason.
Yeah, and look, keep in mind that there are a ton of analysts that are, like I was saying, they're throwing around some of these quarterbacks as top 10 guys, and I'm just telling you, they're not going to be. Now, the only reason they would be is if everybody's after one, and they're 2nd round talent, but they're pushed into the top 10 because it's such a big need. But I'm telling you right now, guys nobody knows what the deal is with Michael Penix, Quinn Ewers, Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy. Nobody knows. Everybody seems to say they're top 10. And I'm telling you right now, that's not the consensus around the scouting community. That's just, these guys have to go in the top 10. Look how great they are. They're not all going in the top 10. Why? Because there's several really good linemen, and then other positions of need out there. Not everybody needs a quarterback, but I'm just telling you that there are going to be guys that right now are graded by the scouts as, like, right now there are a lot of scouts that believe that Bo Nix and Penix and even McCarthy are late 1st round talents. They're not top 10 talents. That doesn't mean they won't go in the top 10 again. But the point is I think it's way too early for us to, let's not get, and this is obviously a good thing for the Falcons, because I don't think that there's going to be a worry. That's why I said at the very beginning, it's not going to be a worry. Yeah, I think it's very possible. Everybody knows Caleb Williams is going to go number 1, whether the Bears or not. And then you have May and you have Daniels. And I think those 3 guys are probably going 1, 2, 3. But after that, I think anything's possible. With Nix,
Penix, I think you can sit at 8 and get Penix or Nix.
You could do that,
there.
Absolutely.
Yes. Maybe McCarthy really rises. We'll see. But yeah, I think 4 probably go in the top 10. I don't think we see like 5.
I agree. I think 4 can make it. Yep. And I don't even know Sanders. That's a kid. He hasn't made a decision.
He hasn't decided yet. Yeah. I think all the buzz was that he was going to stay. But yeah, who knows?
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying Falcons are going to get a quarterback they like. Whether or not it winds up being, again, whether they're going to get Williams, no, but they're pretty much going to be able to get anybody else that they want. And I think that's an exciting deal if you're a Falcons fan, to know that you're going to get yourself a quarterback no matter what. And you just got to hope. Again, you never know, because sometimes the 3rd or 4th quarterback chosen is the best one.
Yeah,
so
you never know. And I'd love to get Jaden Daniels. It really just depends. Like, do the Patriots go quarterback at 3 or not? And if they do, no one really has a chance to trade up. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see.
I think Daniels is the best quarterback in the class, and that includes Caleb Williams. So
he's so exciting.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's the obvious is the quarterback position, and we can go crazy talking about that. And again, it's real early. I know we're talking early. It's January, mid-January, and we haven't even gotten to workouts and combines and all that stuff, and all-star games. Even though a lot of these quarterbacks aren't going to participate, you would think. But let's talk about the rest of the team, and I tell you what. What's kind of I'm going to pop up the depth chart for the Falcons so they can take a look at it. And obviously, you can get this. We'll have a link in the description area for the rlads.com Atlanta Falcons depth chart. Let's start with offense outside of quarterback. And so now the running back position, and I want to talk about the rookies obviously as well, how the rookie class went in 2023 for Atlanta. So let's start on offense. Robinson, is he talent-wise, do you still believe that Robinson is going to be has superstar potential in him?
Yeah, absolutely. I have no question about that. I mean, he broke all the Falcons' records for yards from scrimmage and stuff like that. And that was in a 50-50 timeshare, essentially, the whole season. So I don't think he was utilized well. I think the way they implemented him was exceptionally basic, and they telegraphed his usage so bad that the opponent, I know there was something that came out the other day about the Falcons ran by far the most predictable rushing scheme in the NFL. It's because every time Robinson came on the field, it was outside zone. Every time Algier came in, it was inside zone. And they didn't really adjust that. And Robinson's absolutely fine at running inside or running power concepts or whatever you want to do. They just really hamstrung the run game with their insistence on this inside-outside split with these two guys. And we saw Robinson, obviously, it's kind of interesting because he's a very natural pass catcher in that he's just has really good hands, but he doesn't have the advanced technique of a receiver. So you could see him kind of trying to go for one-handed grabs and things like that. And they were trying to put option routes on his plate and stuff like that early in the season. It didn't really work out super well. He needs more time to learn that type stuff. But I mean, I think in time you could see him have that sort of Debo role where he can really be an extension of the passing game in a lot of ways.
So he should really be
excited
out there.
to
You
see
think he'll have a full-time role is really what he needs. He needs to be out there as much as possible. And if you bring in Algier, that's fine. But Robinson's a special talent, and it is what it is. And there's nothing wrong with Algier getting less snaps, knowing that Robinson's going to be the one to take over those snaps.
Yeah. I think they're both going to get utilized, and they should. This is the bill of goods we were sold. Like, oh, we can have Robinson and Algier on the field at the same time. They didn't really do that at all. So, I think they need someone else to come in and redo this offense. And I think they need to figure out, how to use Kyle Pitts, which shouldn't really be that hard. They made it hard. They made so much hard with this offense.
What's up with Kyle Pitts? What's going on?
Well, he had we knew that he had an MCL tear, and it came out a couple weeks ago that he also had a PCL tear last year. So he had to have an MCL PCL reconstruction in the offseason. And I think that more or less explained why he was taking longer to recover than people thought.
Okay.
And you could still see tremendous receiving talent, great hands, but just not quite 100% in terms of his athleticism. I think that we're going to see a motivated and utilized Kyle Pitts next season with an offensive coordinator that is worth their salt, I guess, in the passing game, because the Falcons' passing scheme was so archaic and it's so boring that it was really sad to watch guys like Pitts and Drake London get like 2 to 3 targets. And it's just unacceptable. So, and part of that was the quarterback, obviously.
Sure.
I mean, but they could have done a lot more scheme-wise to help the quarterback. They could have done a lot more scheme-wise to get the ball to their big-time players, and they didn't really do that. So we will see who gets brought in. I'm partial to Bobby Slowick myself. I think what he's done with C.J. Stroud is tremendous. That offense has had a complete 180 in one season. He's obviously great at working with young quarterbacks. He's got experience on both sides of the ball, which is always nice to have from a head coaching candidate, even though he's an offensive specialist now. So, I think, but if they get Ben Johnson, if they get Bobby Slowick, I'll be really happy. I think Raheem Morris is a strong candidate too, just because, again, he has experience all over. He's obviously got connections with the Rams staff, with several staffs, because he's been around. Surprisingly, people think he's like an old coach because of how early he got his first head coaching opportunity. Raheem Morris is like 47 years old. So he's not an old coach at all. I think he's ready for a second opportunity. He's kind of beloved by everyone he works with. He now has a lot more experience. He knows so many people. I think he could build a really good staff, especially with his connections to McVay's staff. I assume McVay would probably let him take the offensive coordinator in Los Angeles just because he's not calling the plays. So we'll see what happens there. But I think those three guys would be my choices, and I hope they go after one of those and not Bill Belichick.
Well, look, it's another reason why any coach would love this opportunity. This is what you love about the NFL, because some teams, like the Falcons, and I'm even going to say like the Jets, you take a look at what they have out there and you go, wait a second. I mean, I got Bijan Robinson. I had Drake London. I got Kyle Pitts. I've got an offensive line that's young, that has some pieces. Wow. I mean, I'm about to go out and draft a quarterback in the top 10. This isn't something that every team has, and why, if you make the right moves in one offseason, Atlanta's a playoff team. And not just, we made the playoffs. And no, maybe they're a Houston Texans type playoff team, a team that actually you have a lot of fun during the season. And again, a lot of that's going to depend on who the quarterback is, but there's talent here. And let's talk about around Pitts and London and the obvious ones. Is there anybody else? As far as the tight ends, you talked about maybe just letting Jonnu Smith go. Maybe you bring him back on a smaller deal. But is there anybody else that's available, on the team depth-wise besides Algier or Jonnu Smith that is like, oh, yeah, we got to keep this guy?
There's not too many guys that you have to worry about. I think offensively, it's really Mac Hollins didn't play much. I think we had higher hopes for him. Van Jefferson didn't do anything. Scotty Miller didn't do a whole lot either. Kadarius Hodge is a great special teamer, so maybe you bring him back. Matt Hennessy as a top interior backup, Storm Norton as your swing tackle. I'm in favor of bringing those guys back, but again, it's not a whole lot necessary to re-sign. It's really, what do you want to do in free agency in the draft? And I think obviously getting a wide receiver too, probably a speed yards after catch guy to complement Drake London. If you go to an offense that needs a slot receiver, there aren't any slot receivers on the roster because the Falcons don't use them. So that could be an option in the draft or free agency as well. Those tend to be a little bit cheaper, obviously, than the outside guys. At tight end, if they don't bring back Jonnu, obviously Kyle Pitts is fine as your tight end. Absolutely. One, but how do you want more of a blocking specialist? Parker Hesse has been decent there, but maybe they go day 3 for another blocking tight end or what have you. But I think the offense, is pretty much set other than quarterback, which is unfortunate because that's the most important part. But, I agree with you. I think this is a spot where an offensive coach would love to come. They have total control. They have the ability to get any quarterback they want and insert them. They don't really need to spend a year or two building out an offensive line or a receiving room. They just need to add a couple pieces to this unit. And if they keep the defensive staff, they've got what was a fringe top 10 defense ready to go in the worst division in football. So this is an easy opportunity for a guy to come in and get 10 plus wins next year if they get the quarterback right. So I think it's going to be a very competitive spot, assuming they don't just hire Bill Belichick and blow it all up. But you never know with this team.
All right. So you think, though, that sounds to me, though, that this team definitely needs to add 2 wide receivers.
Think so. I was shocked they didn't add one last year in the draft. It was a good class. Sure. They had plenty of picks. They just didn't do it, which was obviously a mistake. Drake London's great. Kyle Pitts, I think, is really good. That's 2 pieces of a passing game. I think Bijan can offer you enough in the receiving game that he functions like a receiver, but you probably need 2 more receivers here. 1 wide receiver 2 type that's going to be a key part of your offense, and then probably a slot guy. But maybe you could make that wide receiver 2 a slot guy and play Pitts more outside. I've been a fan of that. I know some people think he can't play outside. I don't really see that.
But you don't really trust any of these guys to be a number 3 on this roster right now.
Not at this stage. Yeah. No, maybe Bijan could develop into that level player where he can be that consistent of a receiving threat, but that's a lot to ask from a running back, even a really good one. So yeah, I mean, I think you need to get a wide receiver 2 and a wide receiver 3. I think you can probably sign one of those guys.
Sure.
I think going for the slot guy in free agency to
Tyler
get that
Boyd's
veteran
out
slot
there.
receiver. Yeah, get a veteran slot receiver. It's not going to be as expensive as going for that number 2 type guy in free agency. And then drafting a guy in the second round, a Troy Franklin. I mean, this is a deep class. You
Oh,
can get
yeah.
a really good wide receiver
Oh,
on
yeah.
day 2.
Yep.
So I think that's probably the most cost-effective way to do things.
Yep.
And I think would it's just about the quarterback. That's really
Sure.
the linchpin
Yeah.
of this whole thing. If they get the quarterback right, they could probably do whatever they want. They could continue being a tight end heavy offense if they want and keep Jonnu Smith around, or they can go for more of the 11 personnel that they haven't done under Arthur Smith and go for that more traditional passing attack. But I don't think that matters as much as getting the quarterback right and getting the offensive coach right. But we'll just have to see how it unfolds here over the next couple weeks.
All right, let's talk about that offensive line then. So, Jake Matthews is really the only vet. He's the only elder statesman. But right now, is there a weak link?
I think you're probably wanting more from like Caleb McGarry, considering what they paid him, but he ended up finishing the season pretty strong and it was fine. At the beginning of the year was very sketchy. He's just going to be an inconsistent pass protector. That's kind of who he is. But if he can run block well, you'll be happy with that. He ended up finishing as like the 20th ranked tackle. And Jake Matthews is rock solid. He's no longer like a top left tackle anymore, but I think he's easily like a starting caliber left tackle. That's probably not going to cost you any games. So finding a long-term successor there is probably something that's on the wish list, but not something you're going to be able to do this year, more than likely because of the quarterback need. I think rookie Matthew Bergeron at left guard was like quote unquote the worst offensive lineman, but he was fine as a rookie. He was about league average starter.
So
that's
a good
perfectly
future
fine
there.
for a rookie.
He's definitely
and he got better towards the end of the year too, which is what you want to see. So I'm not concerned. Dahlman was like the third graded center according to PFF. If he had some snap issues early in the year. Not the best pass protector, but elite run blocker. Happy with him. And Chris Lindstrom, number 1 guard in football. So, offensive line is fine. You don't got to really do much there. I think swing tackle, if you just re-sign Storm Norton, then I think you're happy there.
Okay.
Bring back Matt Hennessy as your top interior backup. You're probably happy there. I think they got good play out of some of their depth guys like Ryan Newsel, the undrafted free agent that they spent a couple years developing at center. So he's a solid guy. I think that, again, they got good play out of Storm Norton there as the swing. So I think the offensive line is pretty much set. Maybe a tackle to develop as the successor to Jake Matthews. I think you could easily see tackle being a need next year, especially if McGarry has another down year, because that's the year you can get out of his contract for basically nothing. So, or Caleb McGarry, and that's really the thing. It's more of a long-term thing to look at than an immediate need.
Yeah. All right. So defensively, we'll again pop it back up here, and let's just say Campbell. No reason to think they won't be able to bring him back. How did Zach Harrison do as a rookie?
Came on really strong towards the end of the season. I think he finished with like 4 sacks in 4 games or something at the end of the year.
Okay.
After a really slow start. And again, this is Ryan Nielsen's specialty. He's a developer of defensive linemen, has been throughout his days in New Orleans and such. So was really encouraged by what we saw from Zach Harrison towards the end of the year. And he definitely looks like he's going to be a contributor there. If they lose Calais Campbell, that's a big loss. But one thing they have to do is get a top edge rusher, because that was what this defense missed. They didn't have an alpha guy that could really stress offenses on the outside. They had a lot of good rotational guys. Lorenzo Carter, Bud Dupree, Arnold Ebiketie, Zach Harrison. Lots of good guys to have. No true number 1 that could really take over or really like take advantage of an offensive line that was missing a starter, because they played a lot of backup tackles and just didn't really ever take advantage. So, to me, it's going to be hard. If you trade for Justin Fields, then maybe you could spend the 8th pick on an edge rusher. I think that would make a lot of sense. Get like a Jared Verse in here or something like that. If you have to take a quarterback with your top pick, then you're probably going to have to go to free agency. I think you break the bank for Danielle Hunter no matter what. throw whatever money it takes to get Danielle Hunter in Atlanta. And that would be the biggest thing they could do there. And I think they kind of have to. I think that's the one free agent addition they kind of have to make, is they need to get a top edge rusher by whatever means necessary. And that probably means overpaying, but that's the only way to get one of those guys in free agency. There's no other way to do it. So
when you have that much money, you're gonna.
Yes, exactly.
So who is that guy gonna? If you had to guess, with all the money the Falcons have, and let's not throw a quarterback in there. Obviously, that's not gonna happen. So give me a player. Is it Hunter? Is Hunter gonna be considered the prize free agent that you believe the Falcons are going to overspend for, definitely? Or is there maybe another guy or another position that you can throw in there besides Hunter?
I mean, if it was me, it would be Hunter without question. I mean, I think Josh Allen from the Jaguars, but pretty unlikely he leaves. So I would go all out for Danielle Hunter. That would be my pick. I would give him $25 million, whatever it takes, and solidify that spot. I think that's what they need to do. So we'll see if they end up making that move, but I think he's the one that you go for. He's 30. You got probably 3 or 4 high-level years left from him. He's been one of the most consistent edge rushers in the NFL. He did have that couple of years of injuries. But that's well behind him now. He's been healthy for several years now. I think that's the big swing you take in free agency to get that top edge rusher. And then if you do also get Justin Fields and pair him with like a Jared Verse, now you're really cooking. Now you really got something. You got maybe Calais Campbell back too, and you got, Zach Harrison in there. You got to really all of a sudden, and you get Grady Jarrett back from injury, because when the Falcons had Jarrett and Onyemata playing on the interior, they were damn good, even without the edge rush. When Jarrett went down, they lost that sort of special thing they had, which was that interior duo. But if you get those two guys healthy, Onyemata and Jarrett, and you get Danielle Hunter and Jared Verse or Dallas Turner, whoever it is you prefer out there, that's all of a sudden a complete revamped defensive line. With a secondary that's good. And I think that, you add a quarterback to that, and this, all of a sudden this team looks completely different. And I think that's what's so frustrating, is they're that close. That they should have been a playoff team this year. So you get the right coach, you get the right quarterback, you get the couple of pieces you need on defense with guys coming back healthy. And you should be set up to win 10 plus games. And I don't think you need to make a drastic move like Bill Belichick to get there. I think Blank feels like he does, but I think you've done everything right.
Yeah.
You build it slowly. You're in a healthy place in terms of the cap. You've got a roster of players that love each other and love playing together. You don't need to go blow everything up with Belichick. You just need to get – you missed on the coach, and I was a big Arthur Smith fan. I missed on that as well, but the process of hiring Arthur Smith was right. Getting the offensive guy in here to build an offense slowly, methodically, that was all right. They just didn't take a quarterback. That was the biggest issue there, was that he thought he could do it without a quarterback, which is foolish in hindsight, obviously. But you don't need to blow everything up and start over. The coach wasn't the right one, but just try again. Get another offensive coach or an adaptable coach like a Raheem Morris that has experience on both sides. Keep the defense together as much as you can, and just go for it again. And don't overreact when you're so close. But well, Arthur Blank's 82 years old. He's getting antsy. So who knows what'll happen?
Yeah, but again, it won't take that long. We agree on that. Okay, so do you then? When I'm taking a look at the depth chart, so you had the other 2 rookies on defense in the secondary, Helms and Phillips. So are they? I mean, to get a 7th round kid to play and to look like he's part of that mix, that's huge. So how did they both play, those 2 rookies, DBs?
Phillips was very up and down. Phillips had some amazing games, and he had some games where he struggled, and that's kind of just what happens for most rookie corners, right? Unless you're Sauce Gardner. So I'm a big fan of Phillips. I think their plan is for him to start outside going forward, but that's assuming the coaching staff stays the same. Who knows? Sure. I think you can always add depth, always add more corners in the draft. I think it's always a smart plan. Just draft receivers and corners in the middle rounds every year early on day 3, and try to get some guys, which is what they did with Clark Phillips. I think the Falcons should go back to D. Alford in the slot and stop this playing around with Mike Hughes, who just isn't very good.
Okay.
D. Alford was really good, and they benched him for Mike Hughes. again late in the season. That was I loved Ryan Nielsen. I loved everything that defense did except for the last couple games. And Mike Hughes playing over D. Alford. That's my one beef. So
Okay.
let's just go back to D. Alford, who was playing great.
So you don't think that they would look for a nickel?
But they wouldn't do what at nickel?
Look for a nickel. You think Alford should?
I think D. Alford's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. I have no problem with D. Alford. Now depth, obviously, but and then DeMarco Helms. I think he's a very good third safety, who can start in a pinch. That's nice to have. Richie Grant isn't it? We know that now.
Okay.
So getting that safety next to Bates,
that's
if you
a need.
Get a plus safety there. That's a need. So that could be a free agency thing. We know safeties typically, other than Jesse Bates, don't get big money in free agency. So we'll see. I mean, there's definitely guys out there that could be interesting. How much is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson going to cost? Is he going to go back to the Lions? He could be a really interesting guy. We'll see if anyone else breaks free, if there's anyone interesting. Or you could maybe draft somebody on day 2 or early on day 3 to pitch in there. But interested in seeing what they do at that second safety spot, because that is definitely a need.
All right. And then out of that linebacker group, so again, we talked about Dupree, Carter, who knows what they're going to do with those guys. Landman was the guy we talked about a couple years ago when we were going over the free agent class, the draft, and talked about what a really good player he was at Colorado, and the injuries was what held him behind. And it's really nice to see that he's been able to carve a niche and stay healthy reasonably, and that's great because he's a good player, and that's a bonus when you can get a kid like that, as we talked about then, to actually contribute. So, and in Malone and Ibikiti, are those still guys that you believe are just going to be depth guys? Neither one of those guys you think have high upsides future wise?
They would have in Dean Pease defense. In Nielsen's defense, he wants 4-3 hand in the dirt linemen for the most part. So that's why they kind of fell off in terms of their usage, particularly D'Angelo Malone. I do think Malone potentially has a future as that sort of hybrid linebacker, edge rusher type, similar to what Caden Ellis was early in his career, who transitioned to off ball. I think that could be something in Malone's future. We'll have to see how he takes to it, but he definitely played a lot of special teams and was good there. So we'll see if he can carve out that sort of niche. And Malone only ended up playing 3 snaps on defense this year, which was kind of sad considering he's a 3rd round pick. But that's what happens when you change schemes. It's unfortunate. It happens to good players all the time. I would love to see him carve out a role as a special teamer and a linebacker eventually. And we'll just see if he can do it. I know he's a smart player. He's a great athlete. So, I think it's possible, certainly.
Okay.
Ebiketie was just a designated pass rusher for this team, and he was fine. But he did struggle as a run defender a lot. He didn't seem to be very gap disciplined. And I think as a pass rusher, he was good. He was encouraging. But again, it's Nielsen's defense is really predicated on stopping the run first. And when you can't do that consistently, that relegates you to designated pass rusher only, which is why he played so few snaps compared to a lot of guys. So I think Ebiketie's probably stuck as that DPR type player, but he's a good one. And hopefully, I think when the talent everywhere else gets better, it makes everybody else look better as well. So hopefully he can continue to grow and maybe put on a little bit more weight. It was always going to be a tough spot for him to work in a 4-3 style thing. Because he is 6'2", right? He doesn't have the frame. He does have really long arms, which is nice, obviously, for the length, but doesn't have the frame to really put on weight. So it'll be interesting to see. But I like those guys. But yeah, Nate Landman, what a find. Obviously not a great coverage linebacker, but elite run defender, just nice to have. So,
okay. So really, snap wise, what you're saying is overall, were they playing more of a 4-3 base?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. For the most part.
All right. And then at that defensive line, you mentioned, of course, Jarrett being out. So, but with Onyemata and Jarrett, if they bring Campbell back and Harrison, what else do they need up front on the defensive line? What's in the interior? Yeah. Do they need anything? It's just depth.
Yeah, they could use a nose tackle, but they got good play out of LaCale London when he was healthy. I think Contavious Street was looking promising before he got hurt. They have Onyemata and Jarrett. I mean, I would love to see like DJ Reader if they strike out on a top edge rusher, if they just go for him and say like, look, we're gonna just beef up this interior. We're gonna get 3 really good guys, with Jarrett, with Onyemata and DJ Reader in there, and we'll just find a way to make it work. And we'll just play all those guys, and maybe we'll do some drop down linebacker quasi 3-4 type looks, and because they have the personnel to do that. I don't know that that's realistic. I just love DJ Reader. I think he's such a good player. But I think on the interior they're pretty much set. Maybe a nose tackle or something like that. But otherwise, assuming you get Grady Jarrett back healthy, which you should have plenty of time to recover by the time the season comes around, you're pretty much set there. It's just get the edge group set, and you should be good to go.
Now, besides Jarrett, were there any other players that ended up injured? Any key players that ended up injured that might be a problem for next season?
I think that Jarrett was the main one. It's tough to know for sure how quickly he'll be back. I think he should be back for camp. But otherwise, like they were pretty fortunate with injuries this year, which makes it even more embarrassing that they didn't make the playoffs, because they didn't really lose a ton of guys. The big one is Kyle Pitts back healthy? Yeah. So if Kyle Pitts is back to 100%, that's obviously massive. And then I think they had pretty good health everywhere else. So we'll just see.
What happened with Troy Anderson?
I think for the most part they're, yeah. I mean, Troy Anderson was one too, but he was practicing at the end of the year. If they made the playoffs, there's a chance he could have come back and again, they did miss him because he was kind of their guy. I think that was planned to be their primary coverage linebacker and quarterback spy, given his athleticism. So when he went out in the third game of the season, that was rough. But I think those are really the only ones. I think injury wise, they're in pretty good shape.
Okay, so Troy Anderson coming back, he's definitely a big part of the defense as the top cover linebacker.
Yep.
And you lost him in week 3?
I think it was week 3 or 4. It was really early.
Okay. And then special teams, you mentioned that didn't go very well. I mean, how about the kicking game?
The kicking game was fine. I think we saw Younghoe Koo miss a few kicks in Chicago in that windy game, and it's super windy, and it's just a tough place to kick. So I don't, he didn't have a perfect season. Certainly not as good as last year, which was elite. Yeah. But good season. No issues there really. And then Bradley Pinion had a great season as a punter. I don't know where Falcons fans. There's some Falcons fans that think Bradley Pinion had a bad season. He did not. He had 5 All-Pro votes. I think. I mean, he wasn't the All-Pro punter, but he got votes. So, I mean, he's absolutely fine as well. It was really just the return game. Nobody really kicked it to Patterson, so we didn't get to see him. I mean, that's not surprising, but they didn't. No one else stepped up as a punt returner. D. Alford was okay as their backup guy. They tried Mike Hughes there for most of the year. That was terrible. Avery Williams was the best punt returner in the NFL last year, so he tore his ACL in training camp or right before training camp. It was really unfortunate. So if he's back as the top punt returner, they should be all set there. But I think the coverage was fine. I think mostly it was fine. It was just the return game was pretty lackluster, and Koo wasn't perfect. So obviously when you have a top kicker that's not having a perfect season, people get salty. But I think the special teams will ultimately be fine.
Okay. So in wrapping up here, looks like the top needs, again, besides quarterback, the top needs are going to be 2 wide receivers. Definitely got to get one to be a slot guy. You don't have that on the team. Definitely got to get yourself a number 1 pass rusher. So those would be considered 2 big ones, and then the third other big one would be considered a safety to team up with Bates. So would you say those would be the top 3: wide receiver, safety, and edge rusher outside of quarterback?
Yeah. I think those are the top ones, and I think you get those settled, you're in great shape.
Awesome. And the fans, again, everything. I know your opinion by now on Belichick, that's for sure. The fans, are they with you? They're all kind of
I don't. There's obviously some fans that think that just his pedigree and everything would make him a great coach, and I don't disagree with that. He's a great defensive coach. He does have that championship pedigree. I just think for 2 to 3 years, it's not worth it here. We're not close enough to blow up the team for that. That's why I think Belichick's perfect for Cowboys. Sure. Chargers that just
right.
need the defense fixed,
Yeah.
or just have the offense basically ready to go for Belichick to come in. Falcons are not one of them. So yeah, I think most of the fan base feels that way. I'm sure there are some that disagree, but that's kind of where I am.
Yeah.
With it.
Well, that's okay. And then again, your top three are Johnson, Slowick, and Raheem Morris.
Yeah, I probably have Slowick slightly number one, but I mean it's very close. I think any of those three would be good. I think I'd lean towards the offensive guys a little bit more, but I think Morris is ready for another shot, and he has the history in Atlanta too. That would make an easy transition.
Prediction on when you think they're going to hire somebody?
Probably not this week. I mean, I think they're going to do due diligence on all these guys. If they love Johnson or Slowick and those guys last past this round, I think they'll wait for the guy they want. I think if it's Belichick, it could be as soon as they can, because I think they're going to try to close the deal with him if he's who they want. But we'll see if the Cowboys fire McCarthy, because if that's the case, I think they're going to go all out for Belichick as well. And then good luck beating the Cowboys for that. So
yeah.
But yeah, that we'll see. Probably not for another couple of weeks though.
All right. Well, this was a great way to get things started as far as the offseason. Again, it's not really officially here, but in a way it is, of course, for teams like the Atlanta Falcons. And that's why we always like getting Kevin on here to talk Atlanta Falcons football on the Arlads Football Network and here on the Prime Sports Network YouTube channel. So appreciate it as always, Kevin. Falcoholic.com. We've been posting there on the ticker. Of course, you could check out that website and also your shows. Is you doing the daily show, Kevin?
Yeah, it's not daily. It's I think in the off season we're doing like 2 to 3 a week, depending. So we'll have always the Wednesday live, and then depending on other stuff, we'll probably either do an early week or a late week show, depending. But we're just moving into more of the draft, free agency. Obviously, we're going to be covering this coaching search hard over the next couple of weeks, and then we'll be on to more of the off-season topics. So,
and that's on YouTube, the videos.
Yep, the Falcoholic YouTube channel.
Yeah, we have that also available as far as for everybody to check out. The description, check out the link. We've got the links for the Falcoholic.com, the YouTube channel, obviously your Twitter account. We look forward. We'll talk to you again, of course, at some point between now and the draft. Free agency, of course, comes first. So, Kevin, again, appreciate it. How did you fare? How did things go in our first year fantasy dynasty league? How'd you do? How'd you like it?
I think it was fun. I think I was 7th, and I almost won the lower bracket. Yeah, I almost won the lower bracket for the extra first round pick. I missed it by about 1.5 points, unfortunately. But the team was fine. I got really injured. I had Austin Eckler and Aaron Jones. They both got hurt, obviously. So
that's bad.
So that
must have hurt even more watching Aaron Jones play like this.
Yes, I feel better seeing that now. It's like, okay, we're probably gonna be okay next year.
Yeah.
But so other than that, it was a fun season. I love Dynasty, and the nice thing about Dynasty is it's you could have a terrible team and then next year have a great team just because
it's like the NFL works.
So
yeah, you have injuries.
Sometimes guys get hurt or they play different, So I know everyone panics after 1 year of Dynasty, like, oh, my team sucks. Like, yeah, you just relax.
Yes.
Just relax.
Who's your quarterback?
I got Fields and Geno. So I'm going to be drafting another quarterback this year, obviously. But
interesting.
Fields was great when he got hurt in the middle too. That hurt, but we're doing all right. We're doing all right there, and we'll get a new quarterback. We'll get a young running back in here, and we'll be maybe he'll end up on the Falcons, and it'll be even better. So.
That's right. That'll be perfect, really, if you think about it. So, all right, Kevin, I appreciate it as always. And again, I look forward to talking to you again at some point between now and right around the draft.
Yep. Perfect. Thanks for having me.